Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Dr. Aaron Hartman's interest in integrative and functional medicine began after he and his wife, Rebekah, adopted their first daughter, Anna, in 2007. The medical system didn't offer much hope for Anna's medical condition, and they were forced to explore alternative treatments. Aaron began to apply the concepts and treatment modalities that he was learning to his clinic patients as well as to his family. He formalized his commitment to exploring new and advanced treatment opportunities through his membership with the American Board of Integrative and Holistic Medicine, followed by the Institute of Functional Medicine. In 2015, he received his second board certification in Integrative and Holistic Medicine through the American Board of Physician Specialties, and in 2016, earned the recognition as a Certified Practitioner in Functional Medicine from the Institute for Functional Medicine. Dr. Aaron Hartman opened his current practice, Richmond Integrative and Functional Medicine, in 2017. His mission at Richmond Integrative Functional Medicine is to apply his scientific research, medical knowledge, clinical experience, and continuing studies to his patients in an individualized manner. He is also the author of the book UnCURABLE, which he released in October of 2025. You can find Dr. Aaron Hartman on his website at Aaron Hartman, MD. Dr. Aaron Hartman, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
I'm super excited to be here and just have a great conversation.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. What does it feel like to be the doctor who wrote a book about how bad the medical system sucks?
It's just basically a natural extension of my practice of medicine, my family. And it's in many ways just a capstone of what I've been doing. I want my kids to have something. I want my patients to have something. And I want to share kind of what Anna's story. In my mind, part of it's just, for everything she's gone through, having a stroke before she was born, all the issues we talk about in the book. I want her journey, her suffering, her struggle, her work, her success to be worth something, and to help other people have their own kind of uncurable, amazing journeys as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. Did it feel like leaving the mob and like tattling on some of the mob bosses or something? Was it hard to do?
No, not really. I mean, my journey has been incremental. I've been a traditional trained physician, worked in the hospital for almost 15 years in the ICU, admitting patients to the ER, clinic, et cetera, et cetera. And just as my practice evolved and changed with my daughter and my family, it changed step by step, and I just did my own thing. I know some people have these big things where you go from black to white. Mine's just been a slow, steady change. And my focus has always been my family, my daughter, my patients. And because I've always worked for myself outside the military, I haven't had outside constraints or outside influences. For example, during COVID, my clinic never shut down. We had, at that point in time, the clinic I was in, we had 9 or 10 practitioners. And we were open 7 days a week throughout the pandemic. And that was because we were private and we could do that. So a lot of things other people have experienced, I haven't, just because I've worked for myself since 2007.
Wow. Well, that's really impressive that you were able to stay open in that time. And I think it's impressive that you wrote the book. It just shows how much you care about your family. And as you have alluded to so far in this conversation, you have a wonderful story about how all of this came to be. So we have to be able to hear that story on how you you became more aware of the medical system and some tricky situations that you had to face.
Well, I'm excited to share that. It's been a story, it's been a journey. And in hindsight, it's kind of yeah, it's like that, but you don't expect to get turned into Child Protective Services for just wanting to feed your child real food. You don't expect to, have to find out that specialists don't know what they're doing and have to go another route. That's not what you're trained or taught or you expect to happen. But when it happens, you're fighting for your own child. You do what you got to do.
Yeah, wow. So tell us about your child. Tell us about Anna in 2007, how that came to be, and what medical conditions we mentioned a little bit in the introduction she was dealing with.
Well, my wife is a pediatric occupational therapist, and Anna's birth mother did crystal meth throughout her entire pregnancy, which is horrible for brain development, a lot of things. She had a stroke before she was born. And when she was born, she was functionally blind, had no pigment in the back of her eye, and was in a drug coma for the first 6 months of her life. And so really not good prognosis. The specialist said she never walk, talk, or crawl. And so when her foster home was closing, my wife asked, "Hey, would you be willing to bring this little girl into your home?" And I said yes. Not really knowing what I was getting into, but when you're young and idealistic, sometimes you just do things, right? And but that wasn't the thing. It was so we bring her in our house, we're feeding her, doing the best we can. And one of the first recommendations by our GI specialist was, she's not growing, she's failure to thrive. Let's cut a hole in her stomach put a feeding tube in and get some weight on her bones. Well, we knew that was wrong. I mean, fortunately, because I was married to my wife, we discussed handwriting, we discussed chewing and swallowing, we discussed crawling, all these things like infants and kids do are all super critical for brain development, right? And our hopes, prayers, expectations, she's going to walk, talk, and crawl. She's going to be live her best life, whatever that means for her. And so we opted not to do the tube because it would not be great for her. And so the result was the GI doctor turned us into Child Protective Services for child neglect because we refused to do what they recommended us to do. So navigated that. Fast forward 6 months, my wife found a growth chart for kids with cerebral palsy, and she was in the middle. And that was like the second inflection point. And then my first, like, oh my gosh, I have to figure this out because the specialists had no idea. And they were getting ready to commit her to one surgical procedure, which leads to another, which leads to another. The typical, and put things in perspective, Anna's getting ready to turn 20. And the typical person her age with her diagnosis has had 13 surgical procedures in their life by now. And she's had zero. And so the standard of care, the typical route would have been 13 surgeries, heel cord surgeries, spinal surgeries, eye surgeries, I mean, a whole host of things. And she's had none because we chose a different path. Hard, we did a lot of work. But her outcomes, what she's gone through has been nothing short of miraculous because we did with the system, because we fought the system and didn't do what they told us to do.
Wow, that's wild. Okay, I just want to clarify a point that you made. You said that she was in the middle of the chart for where she should have been with cerebral palsy. Is that a contrast to where she should have been had she not had cerebral palsy?
Yeah, so basically, a normal kid with cerebral palsy, they're not putting as much weight on their legs, they're not walking, and so you don't have as much muscle mass, so you're going to be automatically a smaller weight. So there's a special growth chart for those kids. The doctor, the specialist, was using a normal growth chart for a typical
Nice.
kid, and she was off the chart. And so they were using the wrong growth chart. It'd be like looking at, blood pressures for someone in their 80s and compare it to someone in their 20s. Like they're totally different numbers. I wouldn't treat someone in their 20s like someone in their 80s, right? And they were doing that. And that was just a blind spot, a lack of information in their knowledge base that they're the specialists. They're supposed to know this. And they had this hubris and arrogance to report us to Child Protective Services. And lo and behold, my daughter was normal. So it just opened my eyes that if for my daughter, I was going to have to figure stuff out. I was going to have to fight. And that's what we started doing. Every recommendation for every surgery, we found another way out. Traveled around the country to different specialists, traveled out of the country with her to get the best care for her. And at 19, she's reading, she's texting, she can do most of her self-care. She's actually getting ready to move out of the house next year. So she's literally defied all odds.
Amazing. Oh, that's so cool. Boy, just the statement that you just said, she had to leave the United States to get the best care when we spend the most money of anybody, any country on healthcare, and you have to leave the country to get the best healthcare. What does that tell you?
Well, it's funny because I there's a thing called translational medicine. And it's basically you look at research in different countries, bench research, different types, and you try to translate it to the person in front of you. And there's actually a whole field of this. And there's a device called a PONS. I actually read about it in a book by Dr. Doigi, The Brain That Heals Itself. And so it's an oral stimulation device they're using to treat traumatic brain injuries and people with brain injuries, multiple sclerosis, dizziness, etc. I read in Russian literature that they were using it in Russia to keep kids with brain injuries like cerebral palsy. So I wanted to try this, but the problem was it wasn't available in America. But at that point in time, you could get it in Canada. So I have to find someone in Canada who would be willing to do this with a kid with cerebral palsy, and do the physical therapy and everything else. And we found that person in Ontario and drove up there for a week and did it for her with a week there. Then brought the device home with us and continued to use it for about 6 more months as she progressed.
Got it. Wow. Okay. Maybe this is a too naive of a question, but for somebody who is maybe like, pretend you're talking to somebody who's unfamiliar with the medical system, would they just say like, oh, this is just an oversight. This is a product that is available in Russia. They know about it in Canada. We just we're not really paying attention. Is there a specific reason why you would have to cross an international border to have access to that?
Was not FDA approved in the United States. I mean, it just comes down to that. It was a device that existed. They were actually doing clinical trials here. I'm in Virginia, at the Medical College of Virginia. They were doing trials for it with traumatic brain injury patients. And one of my patients actually went there for the trial. But the way it works is like something like that has to go through trials to get approved in the United States. And so if you want to get it, you have to leave the country. And that's just the way it is. I mean, there's peptides, stem cells, a bunch of things that if you want access to here, you either have to find a source outside the country or find a research-based source that's being used in FDA-approved trials to get access to it. And that's just the way mean, it's just not a good or bad, it's just the way medicine is. There's a whole process. But that process, here's the thing. Sometimes it's 30 to 40 years before clinical research makes it the standard of care. And I just wasn't willing to wait. I couldn't wait that time for my daughter. And many
Yeah.
patients can't wait the 20 or 30 years before insurance companies, government institutions say, oh, yeah, this thing they're doing in Germany or China or Russia or Canada, yeah, we can do it here now. I didn't want to wait. My patients and my patients now don't want to wait that long.
Yeah, so I get it, and I appreciate the system, the FDA, and you want to make sure drugs are safe. They have to be effective. You have to go through all the different stages of the trials to be able to show that. It just you kind of smell a rat. You know what I mean? Like it seems like whenever a new weight loss medication it gets like fast tracked, approved really quick, or heaven forbid, certain medications that have been used in the last few years for the pandemic. Like you just like kind of wonder. It seems like if things were effective, they would be fast tracked and used, in a certain way. You just kind of wonder, like, is there money involved? Not a lack of, or I'm sorry, a lack of people that would make money if a device like this is approved. I don't want to put you in a spot where you have to answer for them. I just find it curious.
So we have an incentive structure. I mean, it's like with having kids, right? You get the behavior you incentivize. You get in healthcare, you get what you pay for, right? And so if you pay for procedures, you pay for fancy drugs, you're going to get more of that. A lot of these things that I use, like herbs are used in Germany, low-dose naltrexone, peptides, these are things you can compound that are inexpensive and there's not a lot of money in them. So, who's going to jump through the hoops to spend the tens of 20 or 30 millions of dollars just to get before the FDA and hope they approve it? I mean, it's an expensive, laborious process. You have to have lots of money behind you. And so very few things that are actually have clinical utility actually make it through that process.
Got it.
Supplements are a great example. People don't realize like 99, 98% of all the drugs actually have a plant or animal, have some natural origin for them. They get purified, we can figure out how to synthesize them, and then someone figures out how we can make money. And then you basically go through the whole research process to get the government stamp of approval. But there's so many things out there, from using resveratrol for brain inflammation and Lyme disease to using vitamin D to help prevent cancer risk, or even COVID. If your vitamin D level was over 50, you had less than a 0.003% chance of dying from COVID during the pandemic. And they kind of knew that in Ireland. And actually, the Irish government was sending high-risk patients who had cystic fibrosis and COPD not prescription, they're sending them vitamin D to take. And so why was it controversial here, but the government in Ireland was saying to certain patients? And so that's where what I try to do is look at all this data, all the information out there, and then figure out what's best for the person in front of me. In this case, it was my daughter. And as a physician, I take the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm. I take it seriously. So what that means is whatever I do has to be at least as safe as the standard of care. The good news is the standard of care is actually kind of dangerous. So a lot of these things actually are relatively, ridiculously safe. I talk about blind spots in the book, and I use some information from Dr. Martin McCary, who used to be at Johns Hopkins. Now he's at I think he's at not the FDA, but somewhere in the government right now. And some of his research showed that potentially medical error might be the third most common cause of death in our country. So all of a sudden, me not overtreating, overdiagnosing, overtesting can literally be more beneficial than all these things. So you have to balance all that. It takes years and years of research, years of experience to get to the point where understand all those nuances.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Another point of clarification, you got into functional medicine, integrative medicine eventually, but initially you were trained as a standard physician. Is that correct?
100%. Yeah. I went to Medical College of Virginia, did my residency there, then served in the military for 4 years as a captain and a major physician in the Air Force.
Okay, got it. So you have this really interesting kind of story where you've got the personal side of things with your daughter. You're noticing what's going on. You're getting recommendations from other doctors that basically you just decided to do the exact opposite and had tons of success. But then also you're practicing, and so you're seeing patients all day, every day. What other things were you noticing that you like maybe were wondering about? Like, are we doing the right thing here? Like, what were some of the patterns that you started to notice?
Well, the thing is, you've seen, diabetes or chronic fatigue and fibro or people with heart issues like obesity, whatever. And all of a sudden, I'm learning new tools, new toolkits. And one of the first patients was actually someone with chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia, which the current treatment was narcotics for pain and antipsychotics for the mental health aspects. Because back then in 2014, we still thought that chronic fatigue and fibro was a psychiatric illness, right? And so I heard about this whole yeast overgrowth syndrome in my training. And yeast overgrowth can create oxalates, which cause inflammation and can be a part of chronic fatigue and fibro. And so I'm like, well, how much harm as a week of diflucan. I mean, it's not that big. So I gave it to this patient, and her symptoms went away for over a month. And it was one of those things you read it, you can read about something, hear about it, but when you see it in a person, it's like almost like your eyes open up and you're like, wow, this is real. Like it's not just in books and articles and fancy people at lectures. This actually helps. And so that I started doing more and more with patients, people I thought would be open to lifestyle changes, dietary changes, looking at their health differently. And over years, just kind of learned more about how to practice functional medicine, but I couldn't do it in 15-minute time slots that well. And eventually I decided to change my entire practice model.
Yeah, wow, good for you. Okay, so let's get to your book, Uncurable. You've already mentioned it. Part of what you wrote about is blind spots, which is Dr. McCary's book that he came out with, I want to say last year. Really, really good book. You did a good job writing it. And you call it the wake up call, I believe. And you talk a little bit about the problem with tradition. I wonder what you mean by that.
Well, there's a lot of different angles about that. But the issue with tradition is just, assuming that everything we've learned is all there is to know. Like the hubris of, I'm an expert, I'm a doctor, I'm board certified, therefore what you're saying I've never heard of before, it can't be true. My perspective is, board certification, getting your license, that's just the ticket to the party. That's like, welcome, you're board certified, you've got your thing, great. Insurance will pay for you, people to see you now. That's like the entry level. That's not the peak. That's the foundation, and you got to go from there. And unfortunately, what happens is people go through this education. Oh, I'm now a specialist. I'm now doing whatever I'm doing, and the assumption is you kind of know like most of the stuff, and we lose the inquisitiveness of like, no, you've just now got to the place where you now can start practicing medicine. It was an additional 10 years for me after that until I got really comfortable taking care of sick patients in the hospital, in the ICU. And people just don't think about it's specialty and the way we do things. That's just the entry point of practicing medicine. You're going to spend the rest of your career learning new things, and we kind of crush that in our board certification system and insurance reimbursement system because it's the way we reimburse behavior, and we kind of crush the inquisitiveness and the learning process that people develop throughout college and medical school. And then all of a sudden now it's like you're at the top, you're at the peak. And
Yeah.
people will do the same thing for decades, for 5, 10, 15 years. Like I change what I do every 3 to 6 months. I'm doing something different. And it's a different way of practicing.
Looking back on yourself, you were able to adjust and you changed your whole practice, which must have had financial implications, be very difficult to step out of, the traditional model. I don't know what challenges you faced, but you must have faced a lot of challenges, but you were able to do it. You were able to get out. What is the deal with other doctors out there? Is their fault? We hear all the time, like it's not the doctor's fault because it's the system. And but I mean, you were able to kind of figure it out. You know what I mean? Like,
There's an entrepreneurial mindset. An entrepreneurial mindset is like you're always doing something new. You're willing to push the borders and do things outside the box. And many physicians are not really good. I have a couple of friends that are financial advisors, and they routinely tell me physicians are horrible business people and they're horrible with money. They chronically are in debt and they don't have managed their own money. They're brilliant, but they're not good with money. And so just because someone's smart and brilliant doesn't mean they're good at creating a business or figuring out how to create revenue, whatnot. And so I was just fortunate while I was in the military. I was the commander of a clinic, and one of the things I had to do is look at productivity, measure RVUs, and make sure my clinic was meeting the military standards. So I got really good at counting beans. And so when I joined my practice, I did the same thing there and helped it grow. And I learned like how to figure out revenue streams and how to put a back end and stuff. And I started developing business savvy. And so, and that practice went from 4 providers to about 10 providers when I left. And so helped to grow it, developed its back end, developed its online platform, developed the branding for it. So when I start thinking about my next phase, and also in that period of time, I also started a clinical research company. So I got experience doing that as well, the research company, which is a totally different um, um, reimbursement system. That I just said, let me put a shingle up. My wife encouraged me, hey, why don't you just put a shingle up and see what happens? And so I just kind of spent a year building a website, building a back end, not even know if it was going to be successful, doing it as kind of like an experiment, put it up. And within 6 months, I was full. And so it was an experiment that worked pretty well. And so, but that was me doing lots of work. That was me getting up super early in the morning, 6 o'clock most mornings, working until 7 or 8 o'clock at night, most days of the week. And it's like, are people willing to do work that hard to build their own practice? And most people aren't. Most people want to, when they finish their training, want to clock in, clock out, get their paycheck, and that's okay. but that mindset's not going to create something new and different that that the world's never seen before, or the community's never seen before.
It's absolutely savage. I love that so much. I remember, I don't think I even did much with it when I heard it, but I remember when I was first starting to listen to like Joe Rogan podcast, maybe like 2017, is where I, learned about ketogenic diets and carnivore diets and all that kind of thing back in the day. And I remember, I don't even know who the guest was, but he said like, dude, this is like 2017. There is nothing limiting you. You can start an LLC for like $100. You can go onto YouTube and take a course and learn how to do this. And you can do it on your nights and weekends. Like if you want to do it, you live in a country where it's free and you can do that. And again, I don't think I did that much with it until my wife and I both lost our jobs during the pandemic. We had to start our own business. But I love that mentality of just like, dude, if you want to learn how to cook, you can watch free videos on YouTube and cook, and you will learn that skill. And you can do that for the rest of your life. There's no limitations. There's so many resources out there. And for you to be able to kind of recognize that and run with it, I think is awesome. That's super cool.
I've worked in an urgent care center that was started by ER doctor who did his ER shifts. And then when he wasn't working in the ER, he would basically start the urgent care clinic. He basically worked two jobs until the urgent care started working. I was doing that with my research company and family practice with the Integrative Functional Medicine clinic. You just got to be willing to work. Basically, you get an extra job. You get a second or third job as a doctor, and then you learn business and you research it. And with AI, I didn't have AI when I did this. I had to like find a lawyer, give them $15,000 to give me a bunch of paperwork for like the membership model, which is a model that my practice landed on. Now you can do that with AI. So now with AI, it's almost you have less excuses for not starting a business because you can literally figure it out within 15 minutes of research and prompting.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. That's such a cool life lesson in there. Okay, as we look around us, I think it's pretty obvious that we're in a health crisis. I mean, you see it all around you. The way that overweight is just so normalized. Every handicapped space is taken at most stores all the time, and we're obviously not in a great spot. So as you were researching this and learning about some of this stuff, learning that there are root causes, in your opinion, what are some of the root causes that got us here? Is it just poor genetics and this was always going to happen? Was it certain medications? Was it a dietary change? Are we lazy, slobbish people now, and we don't ever move? Like what happened? What were some of the root causes that got us where we are today?
I think genetics are funny. I say genetics are so 20th century. Remember how genes are going to cure everything? The Human Genome Project that was finished in 2000. It's been 25 years. What's been cured since then? Like, I'm sure something somewhere, but really nothing. The BRCA1, BRCA2 gene in the 1950s was associated with a 20% risk of cancer, right? That's the gene for breast cancer. Now it's 80%. So in 50, 60 years, whatnot, we've had a 400% increase risk for cancer with this gene. So the gene by itself that wasn't determinative now has become, that's the environment. And so what we're learning is the environment's actually more important than your genes. 80% of heart disease can be prevented by diet and lifestyle alone. 70% of most cancers can be prevented by diet and lifestyle alone. So all of a sudden, the number one, number two killer, diet and lifestyle. And so the question is, well, what's changed? We're eating, 80% of Americans eat processed food. 80% of what Americans eat is processed. 60% of what we eat is highly processed. Healthy fats, seed oils. There's a big issue about seed oils, controversy. The way I talk to patients about the whole fat oil thing is eating plastic is not good for you, right? What is plastic? Plastic is a petroleum product that's we made solid. What is margarine? It's a liquid oil, corn oil, where we turn into a semi-solid. And like when you put that in your body, it destroys your cell membranes. And so eating fake fat, removing healthy fats from our food system, not eating real food, then all the chemicals in the environment, there's like 80,000 chemicals that are currently in our environment. About maybe 3,000 have been evaluated for safety. We don't know what, 77,000 of these things are, and they're in the environment all over the place. So it's a combination of chemicals, processed food, and then stress. Like it's amazing how much stress by itself increases your risk for cardiovascular disease, heart disease, cancer. So I think it's a combination of all these things. And then it's like your history, where you live. Depending on where you live, there's more cancers in Long Island, for example, or Annapolis, for example, on the East Coast and other places because of just chemical companies and chemical runoff in the environment. So those are the big things. And none of those is fancy. These are all basic things. Clean your food up, clean your environment up. Clean water, clean food, clean air, clean environment. Like these are not difficult things, but once you realize how hard it is to get real food and how hard it is to find a clean place to live, that's where it gets complicated.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I love that explanation. I love that you brought up seed oils. It's our most tagged video of anything we ever like talk about here. Have you seen the video of how it's made, canola oil? Where you remember the
Hmm.
how it's made show where they would show you like how they make
Yeah.
basketballs and bicycles and all that stuff. Have you seen the one where they make canola oil?
I've seen videos of canola oil being made, maybe not that particular one, but how they take it, they press it, you have to deodorize it. People forget canola oil was a motor oil in the late 1800s, and it's actually rapeseed oil, right? Well, rapeseed oil is a bad name, and most of it was made in Canada, so they said, "Huh, we'll rename it to Canada canola oil," right? And then they use a deodorizer, a solvent, so they use a solvent to remove the odor, right? And then you eat that. It's like if you say it like that, it's like, whoa, why is this a good idea again?
Yeah, it's so gross. Next time you're at the grocery store, go find all the walls of seed oils, which we call vegetable oils, and marvel at the fact that not one single drop of that oil came from a vegetable. And then marvel at like what you're going to see is this like clear, golden, pure looking oil that looks absolutely amazing. And then you see like this video. It is disgusting. It is so gross what they have to do to this stuff. It's hardly fit, it seems, for machines, and yet we pour it into our bodies every single day. It's crazy. And you mentioned controversy. If somebody were confused about that, what would you explain as far as like what is the controversy around seed oils being healthy or unhealthy?
Well, the thing is, seeds are actually healthy. Flax seed, sunflower seed, almonds, walnuts, these are actually super healthy for you. So we need healthy omega-3s and omega-6s in our diet. The issue is, how do you get the orals out? When you start expeller pressing things, heating them up, using solvents to extract it, you're taking something that we need naturally that's ridiculously healthy, and you're making it unhealthy. Omega-3s and omega-6s, which most seed oils have high amounts of omega-6s, are temperature labile, meaning if you get heated, they become rancid. You get these long chain fatty acids, you get lipid wraps in your cells, and so all of a sudden, something that is healthy, we're making it into something very unhealthy. And part of the process is when you do that, you lengthen the shelf life of these oils so they can be on the shelf for years and years. You think about butter, real butter, like we get raw butter, okay, and once we get out of the freezer, it will start fermenting, and within a week it starts souring a little bit, and then actually in 3 4 weeks it'll mold. You get your margarine or your processed butter and you put it on your countertop, it won't mold. It'll stay there for a month or two or three. And the question is why? It's because of this whole process that's being done to it. And ultimately, the thing about there's a type of medicine I do called lipid medicine or membrane medicine. I take people with neurological issues, autism, pandas, PANS, anxiety, ADHD, people with cognitive decline, and I actually do medicine at the level of the membranes. And I give them healthy omega-3s and 6s, phospholipids, and we actually do an oral change on all the lipids in your body for health purposes. It's crazy how that powerful that is, and yet people are doing the exact opposite in their diet by consuming bad fats, bad oils, all these kind of things. And it's when you understand the science behind it, it just makes sense. But the reality is like, why doesn't the government tell me it's bad? Why don't they tell me this is so bad for me? Why are there advertisements saying healthy, that's heart healthy? And it's like, well, the government, the AMA, my organization, 1970s, was saying it's controversial if smoking causes cancer, smoking's bad for you. So I always use the smoking example about how bad we got it, how wrong we got it for how long, and take that and apply that to food, the food pyramid. The food pyramid was wrong, right? We all know that now. So lots of carbs, bad for you. Taking out healthy fats, bad. Replacing with high calorie things, that's part of the diabetes epidemic and the obesity epidemic. And so it's just we've got it wrong, and the controversy just is marketing. It's marketing and advertising, and it's kind of
Yeah.
hard to overpower marketing and advertising.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, okay. Well, you're talking to an audience that largely accepts the fact that fat is good for us. Saturated fat is not the
Okay.
villain that we thought it was. So that's great. You're also talking to people that probably are aware of seed oils. I really hope we've banged that drum enough on this show that people know about that. But to somebody on the street, they might say, okay, like so I'm not supposed to eat the vegetable oils. Now I'm left with like olive oil, maybe avocado oil. There's a little bit. I think that's good because they talked about that in the 90s as part of like the Mediterranean diet push or whatever. But that we still know that saturated fat is going to clog our arteries. Can you tell somebody who might be thinking that what the truth is about saturated fat?
Saturated fat is an essential fat. You actually need it. It actually saturated fat is like essential fatty acids, omega-3s, omega-6s. Your cell membranes, cholesterol molecule, which is saturated fat, actually makes your membranes and your stable. Okay. Cholesterol is a type of saturated fat that's made 80% is made by your liver. You get some from your diet. So we actually need these in our diet. you actually need most of the fat you consume to be saturated fats. So when it became a marketing thing, let's lose weight, let's get cholesterols down, that stuff was happening in the 70s. What they didn't realize is one of the bigger drivers of cholesterol is actually processed foods. So have you ever had someone eat, cake and sweets and stuff, and the triglycerides shoot up, cholesterol shoots up? You're like, I had no fat in my diet. How do you get your cholesterol go down, Casey? Olive oil, fish oil, healthy omega-3s, omega-6s. What? I thought this was bad for me. No, it's it's the devil's in the details, right? So you want real healthy fats, clean fats. You want and saturated fat. There are good saturated fats and bad saturated fats. But it's interesting. What were people eating 4,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago? They weren't eating these processed rancid oils. They weren't eating oils being crushed out of corn, right? They were eating olive oil, avocado oil. They were doing butter. They were doing ghee. Ghee's been used, and it actually was a medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, going back 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. We just need to go back to these traditional forms of fat that have been used historically for millennia. And now we're getting a lot, and I don't say now, there's a whole field of medicine called lipid medicine or membrane medicine that's 40 years old. It's not new. So that's part of the issue, is just the marketing aspect of and part of the government picked a winner and a loser. And they picked the winner was, low fat diet, and the loser was fats. And we're kind of reaping reaping from that bad decision that our government made, maybe 50 years ago.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And this goes back to your own personal story. As you have, I'm not sure if it's ranching or what you would consider it, but you do own cows, right? You are harvesting your own cows.
Correct. Yeah. We part of our journey was, have the environment be as clean as possible, clean water, clean food, clean air. And in our family, we take things to a little bit of extreme. So my wife was like, hey, let's homestead. And so I started researching, okay, we get this little property. How do you have healthy cows? Started reading some of Joel Salatin's work, read some of Sir Albert Howard's work, Soil and Health, Weston A. Price's work, and realized that if I want to have healthy cows, I need to have really good soil and really good grass. So I started focusing on raising grass, got my cows, did rotational grazing. And then you learn, like, they're amazing. Think about it. Like, where does the protein come from in a cow? It eats grass. Where does the calcium come from? Where's the magnesium? Where's all the stuff come from? And cheese and yogurt, and where's it all come from? And basically, the cows are a concentrator of minerals from the soil. The minerals get in the grass. They eat so much of it, they can get the calcium out of it. Then they ferment the stuff. And the fermentation process makes B vitamins. It makes your saturated fats, your fatty acids that you find in cows are actually come from fermentation. So it's really interesting. Like, on the food chain, like, you got basically, it's like grass than cows. It's so low on the food chain. And if you get grass-fed, grass-finished meat, it's leaner. It's actually has healthy CLA, healthy omega-3s, a balanced level of omega-6s, versus cows that are fed, seeds, grain, have crazy high levels of omega-6s in their meat. So, and those cows, by the way, are pre-diabetic cows. Marbling cow meat is a pre-diabetic cow. So do you want to eat a pre-diabetic cow? And the answer typically is, well, no. But I just learned so much from animal husbandry and studying soil health and ecology that then translated to taking care of patients.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's so cool. Cows are amazing. I love learning about their cycles and how they can ferment everything, and understanding the fact that, yes, they're eating carbohydrates, but like you said, they're creating saturated fats, and they're running on saturated fats the way that we should as well. We just have different digestive systems that work differently. So yeah, I really appreciate that. And it must have been challenging to go through kind of the low fat era and red meat is bad for you, to learn the other side. No, wait, there's a really healthy way to do this. We need the fats. We need the protein. Those are essential for life. And to be able to do it, yourself must have been incredibly rewarding.
It's been a great journey. I've learned a bunch from it. And it's the cool thing is my daughter's journey, everything she's gone through has actually enabled us to help me and my practice, just to help thousands of people. And that's been a really cool story as well.
Yeah, got it. Okay, this might be my final question about nutrition. We love learning about this stuff, and I like the way that you approach this, where you really just kind of start out with most people, according to what I've heard you say in the past, is just whole food diets. Like, most of the food we eat, you gave us the percentages, 60% of what we eat is ultra processed. Let's just eliminate that and start with whole foods. Do I have that correct for you?
See, real food, real food in moderation, mostly plants. It's super basic, super simple.
Got it. Okay. How do you know when to dial things in as far as, like you've got different diets listed on the website and one of them is like a ketogenic diet. How do you know when you need to go stricter and stricter and stricter with your diet to be able to get to a certain end?
Depends on what you're trying to treat. If I have a kid with a seizure disorder, for example, then a ketogenic diet can actually, we did that in the 20s in America. We treated seizure disorders with a ketogenic diet. It really depends on what you're trying to do. If I have someone who's trying to detoxify, I'm gonna want them to have, healthy plant matter, usually green leafy vegetables in there. If someone has an autoimmune disease, I'm gonna want them to do like an autoimmune paleo type diet where they remove not just your inflammatory foods like grains, but also legumes and seeds and nuts, as well as eggs. So I look at the patient and give them a diet specific to their underlying condition. There are all these diet fads. There's a paleo fad there, which is a great diet. There's a keto fad, the carnivore fad. There's all these fads out there, the lion diet, that will help some people, but they won't help everybody. And that's, what I'm able to do because of my practice is to look at someone and say, you're hypermobile, for example. You're gonna need more organ meat, more bone broth, and that person actually might do better on a carnivore type diet. You're someone who has low cholesterol levels because you've been on this low fat diet for your, a ketogenic diet might be amazing for you. So I just kind of look at the patient and figure out what diet's best for them.
I love that. No, that's great. We're huge fans of the carnivore diet around here, but we say the same thing. Like, this is not for everybody, and it's not even for long term for a lot of people. So, do you have any long term concerns with somebody who's doing a carnivore diet?
The thing is, you're not we're omnivores. You're not a lion. You're not a tiger. You're an omnivore, and so you need a certain amount of plant material. If you look at, there are cultures that are animal heavy, like the Maasai, for example. And there are seasons where they'll do like just cow meat and milk, but there also are seasons where they'll eat lots of plant life. And so things seasonally make sense. Depending on where you live in the world, your body's needs change seasonally based on when it's really cold outside. Carbs won't keep you warm. You need more fat and protein. When it's spring, it's interesting how microgreens pop up, and they have lots of nutrients to help you detoxify, help your liver detoxify. So, looking at the environment, but it's with carnivore long term. If you just do that, it's going to affect your gut, your microbiome, because you have these bacteria in your gut. And sometimes the carnivore diet helps people because it's actually starving strep, staph, and yeast, which many people have overgrowth in their gut because of our processed food diets. But if you do large amounts of just meat for long term, you're going to be depleting these plant phenols, which are plant colors that we now know feed healthy bacteria in your gut. And so it's be dogmatic about one diet. It's like, just look at ancient traditions, ancient cultures. You don't see any one place in the world that they eat the same thing year round. It changed with the seasons. So maybe the common sense thing is, and depends on where you're at in the world as well. The diet of Native American Indians in Canada is radically different than the diet of people who live around Ecuador. And so why is that? There's different needs for the environment, and strangely enough, nature provides those for you as it changes throughout the seasons.
Yeah, that's very well said. I totally agree with that, and I really appreciate that. Let's talk about some of the other modalities. If you could go, maybe prioritize wise, excuse me, if we could both kind of agree that nutrition's a huge one, probably the biggest one, maybe in my opinion, but there's other things that we can do. So, what are some of the other really big rocks that you've learned that can help the most people? Obviously, there's going to be some individualization. So, we're just doing like really high level, generalized kind of stuff. What kinds of things should people be thinking about to improve their general health?
The big thing I refer to is the triangle of health: gut, stress, and sleep. And then gut health is real food, in moderation, chewing 20 to 30 times before you swallow, all these like basic things to help your body process the food. Stress, we're horrible with stress control. Just stress alone, having intense amounts of stress has been associated with increased incidence of cancer and autoimmune issues. And sleep. The average American sleeps about 6.5 hours a night. The average American sleep deprived. Sleep is a superfood. Sleep is a super nutrient. If you're not getting it, it's going to affect every aspect of your health. So the keys to basic health aren't that complicated. You want a clean environment, avoid toxins and chemicals. Don't like spray your yard with pesticides. How many people spray their yard for mosquitoes or termites or whatever, spray their house, the things you use to clean your house with, cleaning chemicals. This detoxify, clean environment, clean food, clean water, clean air, clean environment is the basic concept. But when you start looking at it, we literally slather ourselves with a lot of these chemicals and processed foods. So those are the basic high level things I usually focus on with people.
Yeah. And again, like you mentioned earlier, there's different levels of things you can control and things you can't control. So just
Yeah.
trying to focus on the things you can, I think, is really helpful.
Yeah.
Where does kind of movement fit in with what you recommend? Let's start specifically with your daughter. I'm just kind of curious. Like, was there any kind of movement that really tended to help her?
We actually used a thing called suit therapy, which was a therapy created in Eastern Europe for cosmonauts, for Russian astronauts, and basically it was a bungee system that would help their body exercise and move. And we started using it with our daughter. The average 3 or 4 year old kid spends 8 hours a day practicing walking. She wasn't walking, so we had to mimic that somehow. Using your body moving actually creates these things called myokines, which are muscle hormones that actually activate your brain. So using your muscles actually activates your brain. The new saying is sitting is the new smoking. That's how bad not moving is for your health. And so physical activity by itself has a massive anti-inflammatory impact. It burns off excess cortisol, helps you calm your nervous system down. It's interesting how important physical activity throughout the day is for getting sleep. If you ever have a day where you're really busy and in the day you're just like you're ready to go sleep, right? If it just impacts so much of our health. And so that's another foundational thing that we make a big deal about when we see patients in the clinic and was huge, huge for my daughter's health journey.
Got it. And so this device, is it safe to say it mimics like resistance training?
It's basically basically a bungee suit you wear that hooks you up to the cage and you kind of bounce around and it kind of sort of and it allows someone whose legs don't work to actually put some weight on their legs.
Got it. Okay. Well, I hope this isn't too much of a diversion. You're probably well aware of these studies. I just find it fascinating. We just hosted a doctor in Australia who's been doing work with geriatric patients and strength training, and they've been doing it for years and years. And they realized, like in the 80s, they were telling geriatric patients that they needed to walk, and these people like wouldn't go walk. And so what they did is they used that as a control, and then took these other people and started them on a strength training program, and just strength training with the geriatric patients. They were able to do it. All of them were able to do it, and they found out that those people started walking spontaneously 35% more than the other group. So they found it wasn't like a lack of, desire for walking. It's that they couldn't because they didn't have enough muscle mass. They weren't strong enough to be able to do it. And once you made it strong, then people spontaneously wanted to walk, whether you told them to walk more or not. Is that kind of the pattern you noticed in your daughter?
Um, Her was a little different because she had brain damage. She didn't develop the ability to walk and lose it. She never developed it initially at all. So it was a little different. She's always been a fighter. She's always been a hard worker. She's always been like a joy. And so it was just a little different for her, part of her journey.
Got it. Okay. You do have a chapter that's all about health tracking, which I wanted to ask you about.
Mm.
What are some of your favorite ways to track? Are there, kind of tracking tools you recommend for everybody, or again, is this something that's very individualized?
To be honest with you, there's a lot of fancy tools out there and a lot of cool gadgets. Everybody's gonna have their favorite. What I use is my Aura ring right here. It's, I like it. You can track movement. They'll tell you how many steps a day you're taking. It tracks your heart rate throughout the day. It tracks heart rate variability, which is a huge factor, particularly with sleep quality and stress levels. It tracks how many hours you sleep at night and tells you how many hours you get in deep and REM sleep. And so it gives you like besides tracking your food, which there are other apps for that, it tracks movement, sleep, and stress levels. And so it's really tracking like the really big players. And then it also tracks your body temperature when you sleep at night to tell you if like you're getting sick or your body's stressed. And so it gives you some really cool data points that if you learn to track your own body, like personally, like, for example, if I have a bad night's sleep, I'm like, why did I sleep bad? And it's usually I ate something right before I went to bed. I've learned personally that sugar within 3 hours of bed will destroy my deep sleep. I can't have any alcohol within 6 hours of going to bed. You learn how your body responds to stuff. And the Oura Ring's a really simple one that I use. There are a bunch of other devices out there that are kind of sort of close to it. Some ones that are kind of the exact same with a different name. I won't mention those, but it's like the one device that I've used tons of devices, bought them, it costs $300 to $500, and most of them after a month or two, I stopped using. This one I've been using for years.
Got it. Okay. I really like that. One of the things I really love about your book is it feels very empowering on an individual level. So I'm going to ask you, first of all, systemically, do you foresee a time that the system of healthcare itself is going to change?
That's an interesting question. People ask me that question in many different ways. I think for our system to change, the people have to demand it. Some people are like, let's pass new laws, let's pass new regulations, let's, hopefully make America healthy again. Hopefully that will, take off and we'll make America healthy again. But I really believe that the movement needs to happen from the bottom down. I mean, the bottom up. It needs to be people being educated, people learning they can take control of their health and actually change. And that's what's going to change the system. Just like the incentives we talked about before with, you know, reimbursements, insurances, whatever you want to say the issue is, people vote with their money. And that's the reason why you can now buy organic food in Walmart, is because people started demanding with their money. You know, when we started this journey back in 2008, 2009, it was almost impossible to find organic anything anywhere, except for these weird crunchy stores you'd find that have crystals and weird stuff all over the place. And now it's like every store has it. So really, I think people need to take charge of the health, get educated, which is the reason like what you're doing and what I'm doing is important to educate people. And if you really believe it, use your money, buy organic food, buy local, buy from your local farmer. You know, that's what I think is going to change things and demanding better from the insurance company. I'd like to think that at the government level and state level things are changing, but there's so many special interests at play here. And we'll have, you know, in every 2 years to 4 years, the governors and senators, whoever, not senators, but you know, people change. And so it's really hard to make any headway we make. It's hard for it to stick just because of how much flux there's in our government. So I really think it needs to be a bottom-up thing.
Yeah, got it. I agree with you. And it must be, I mean, I'll just ask you, is it astounding to you to see people pull up in whatever car they have and tell you that they really can't afford eggs and meat in this day and age? Like,
it's for me, it's more because I don't see what people, I see what the clothes people wear, the watches they have on. I hear about their vacations to Disney or other places. And then it's like, I can't afford this, that, and the other. I don't want to pay for that, or this is too expensive. And I'm kind of like, kids going to private school, your kids in soccer club, soccer thing is like, you know, this is expensive. Your kid does dance and ballet. You just had a big family vacation. The reality is when people say, people have this unwritten expectation healthcare will be free. If insurance doesn't pay for it, it's not worth anything. And even though, and most people have that mindset and they're not willing to invest in their health. And it's really an investment. You know, there's a saying, it's an ancient, I think either Chinese or Indian, just saying that, you know, he who has his health has 1,000 dreams, and he who does not have his health has but one, and which is, you know, to get his health back. And so people don't see their health as an investment. They see it as a right, as somehow as a right. And when you think about it like that, there's no impetus on you to claim it, to go for it, to work it. And if it's an investment like retirement, then you have to daily put stuff in. And I think it's a mindset issue. People just don't see it as that. And so all of a sudden, oh, what do you mean I need to pay this amount of money for whatever? It's like, yeah, if you want that, you got to pay for it.
yeah. Yeah, and we're not telling you not to go to Disneyland and not to have a nice car and a nice watch and all that other stuff, but you really need to look at where you're allocating your things. Okay, so tell us how you're practicing today.
How I'm practicing, I'm practicing integrating functional medicine, basically in a clinic that's a membership-based model that allows me to practice medicine to the best of my ability, based on my clinical research and evidence, as I see fit with the patients. You know, I focus on the patient preference, most up-to-date literature, and my clinical experience, which is what evidence-based medicine is supposed to be.
Yeah. Oh, I love that, man. This has been such a fun conversation. And I know our audience really appreciate you and all your insights. For now, where can people go to find you and connect with you and your work?
Well, if you learn more about me, you can visit Aaron Hartman, MD, which is the kickoff for my podcast, all my other stuff. And then my book, UnCURABLEbook.com, is if you want to read my daughter's story and how she changed everything about my practice of medicine and start your uncurable journey. That's UnCURABLEbook.com.
Nice. We will link that up in the show notes. And we didn't even talk about your podcast. I've listened to several episodes now. I really, really enjoy it. You do a great job of breaking things down and making things understandable. So kudos to you. What have you liked so much, or what have you liked so far about your podcasting journey?
I actually just enjoyed interviewing other people and talking with Dr. Jensen in my practice. I'm just learning from people and having great conversations. And it's always cool to hear from patients as well. They like the podcast, they learn about it. So that's the reason I started, was I initially just for people. I didn't have time to educate people about everything. So I'm like, let me do a podcast where I can educate you about stuff. And so it's been cool.
Yeah, well, great. From one podcaster to another, excuse me, you do a great job, and I really enjoy it. So thank you very much, Dr. Hartman. We've really enjoyed chatting with you and covering so many topics today. We really appreciate you and all your hard work, and thank you for taking time to be on our show today. We really appreciate you.
Casey, thanks a lot. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about everything.
Absolutely. It was great. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.